There's one thing that Australian politicians are really good at, possibly the only thing, and that is diverting attention from the real issues and scapegoating others for the problems that they, the politicians, have caused. Now, right now, the core issues impacting Australian households include the housing shortage, the high cost of creating desperately needed new homes, the chronic rental shortage, and the reality that rents keep on rising and rising. It's noteworthy that the recent annual general meeting of Commonwealth Bank reported that they've had to provide emergency payment arrangements to 132,000 customers who are struggling to pay their mortgage amid a cost of living crisis and very high interest rates. We've also had saturation media coverage of the plight of tenants paying higher and higher rents amid a chronic shortage of homes available for rent. So what are politicians and journalists obsessing over? The issue of negative gearing. Now, it begs the question, what relevance does negative gearing have to the issue of housing shortages and the high cost of building new homes and the chronic shortage of rental properties? And the answer is none. It has no relevance whatsoever. Scrapping negative gearing won't fix any of those problems, but it may make some of them noticeably worse. Now, recently, columnist James Kirby wrote about this in the Australian newspaper, and he wrote, "Experts are warning the government's review of property tax concessions could make housing affordability worse, with New Zealand's recent failed attempts to do something similar cited as an example of what could go wrong." After the New Zealand government cut tax incentives for property investors 3 years ago, the volume of investment funds entering the residential market halved, and as the supply of rental properties evaporated, rental prices soared. Kirby wrote, "The attempt to change New Zealand's version of negative gearing and its capital gains tax regime were widely seen to have backfired, and a new government has since progressively reversed the original changes." However, Kirby points out the Treasury in Canberra is now assessing the same tax territory with a review of negative gearing, where property investors can declare losses against tax and also the capital gains tax. Kirby says, while Anthony Albanese has distanced himself from the review, insisting that it's an internal move by Treasury, tax changes around property investment are highly sensitive, especially as the ALP's Shorten era election loss was significantly due to unpopular plans to restrict investor tax incentives. And Ray White Group Chief Economist Nerida Knisby says, "The current tax incentives ensure that we have enough rental housing. If you cut those incentives, you'll only have to look at New Zealand to see what may happen. New Zealand is now the least affordable rental market in the world." Kirby wrote, "Put simply, making property investment less attractive will drive investors out of the market." He said, "The only question is the degree to which they will flee, and that in turn depends on conditions at the time. In New Zealand, the reform measures were imposed as prices were falling and interest rates were rising, exacerbating the blowback from investors who cut their funds in the New Zealand market from 21 billion in 2021 to just 11.8 billion in 2024. Kirby also referred to the fact that Paul Keating, as Australian Federal Treasurer, scrapped negative gearing in Australia in 1985 and then 2 years later reversed his decision and reinstated it in 1987. And that was because the end to negative gearing benefits caused a shortage of housing across Australia and rents rose sharply. So it's time for Australian politicians and journalists to stop obsessing over side issues like negative gearing and focus on the core issues in the housing industry, which is the shortage of dwellings, the high cost of fixing that shortage, and in particular, the chronic undersupply of rental properties.